Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is radical equations. So basically, when you're solving a radical equation, the one thing you need to do is you need to get the radical by itself. Okay? Once you get the radical by itself, you can square it to get that radical to go away. But one important thing, you have to check for extraneous solutions. So there's solutions that we plug back in and they don't work. So what can't we take the square root of? We can't take the square root of a negative. So if we plug our answer in and it gives us a negative, we know that we can throw it out. Okay? So let's look at number 1. So here's our radical. We need to get it all by itself. Is it all by itself? No. First we need to subtract the 2. So we get the square root of x plus 1 equals 2. It's by itself. Once it's by itself, we can square it. Now if we square the left side, we have to square the right side. Squaring the radical will cause it to go away. So we'll be left with whatever is underneath. So we'll have x plus 1 equals 2 squared is 4. Solve for x. So we'll subtract 1 and x will give us 3. Now, does 3 work? So let's plug 3 in to where the radical is. What is 3 plus 1? It's 4. So we'd be taking the square root of a positive number. So that means that 3 works. It didn't give us a negative. Alright, moving on to example number 2. This one's a little harder because we have 2 radicals. We have the square root of x minus 15. We have the square root of x. So we're going to end up squaring twice. So it's up to you which one you want to get by itself first. Now, since square root of x minus 15 is already by itself, I'm going to square that one first. So take both sides and square it. So that means on this left side, the radical will go away. We're left with x minus 15. On this right side, we have to actually square 3 minus square root of x. So we're going to get 3 minus square root of x times 3 minus square root of x. And you have to do that because we have to FOIL. So we'll have x minus 15 equals 3 times 3, which is 9, 3, negative 3 square root of x, negative 3 square root of x, and negative square root of x times negative square root of x is positive x. Remember, when we multiply a radical by itself, the radical will go away. Now let's add our like terms. So we have x minus 15 on the left side. We have 9. Then negative 3 square root of x minus 3 square root of x. Those are like terms. It'll give us negative 6 square root of x plus x. So what we need to do is we need to get this radical out by itself now. So let's subtract the 9. So we'll get x. Negative 15 minus 9 is negative 24 equals negative square root of x plus x. Is our radical by itself? No. We still need to subtract that x. So the x's are going to end up canceling. So we'll have negative 24 equals negative 6 square root of x. This radical is still not by itself. We're going to need to divide by negative 6, which will give us positive 4. It's finally by itself, so we can square both sides. So x will equal 16. Now make sure you plug that answer back in. So go back up to the top. If we plug in 16 here, 16 minus 15 is positive 1. That's okay. Plug 16 in here, it's just 16, so we don't get a negative. So 16 is our answer. Now I'm actually going to do one problem on your homework. So go to number 12. Alright. So if we have two square roots, and both of them are already by itself. So you'll see here, this radical is all by itself. This radical is all by itself too. So there's nothing we can really do. We can't move anything over. So directly from here, if you have a radical on one side and a radical on another, you can go ahead and square it. So we'll be left with x plus 5 equals x squared plus 5. Alright, these 5's will end up canceling because if you subtract 5, they're gone. So we get x equals x squared. Now I know what you guys are going to want to do. Yeah, we're going to want to take the square root here. But that's not going to help us. If we take the square root, we'll just have x equals the square root of x. That doesn't help us. We're just going to end up with another square root. So because this is squared, I'm going to see if we're going to end up factoring. So I'm going to get everything over to one side. So I'm going to subtract this x. So x squared minus x equals 0. Now I want you to think about this. Is there a GCF? What do they have in common? They have an x. So we're going to take out an x. So x times what will give me x squared? X. X times what will give me negative x? Negative 1. Last step, set each one equal to 0. So x equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0, so x equals 1. We got to plug those answers back in and see if any of them give us a negative. So plug in 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. That's a positive. 0 squared plus 5 is 5. That's a positive. What about 1? 1 plus 5 is 6. That's a positive. 1 squared plus 5 is 6. So guess what? They both work. And that's how you solve radical equations.